This podcast is not intended to and does not create a client-therapist relationship between the AllPro Mindset hosts, Jason Frabel or Dr. Aaron Sapio, and any other person. Although tips for incorporating mindfulness interventions into your daily life are offered, this podcast is not a group therapy session and is not intended to take the place of therapeutic intervention.
Listening to Doc and Coach on AllPro Mindset, where we interview professionals, explore positive outlooks, and make connections to our own lives. Thank you so much for tuning in to our show. Whether it's the evening, the daytime, the morning, whatever you have going on, we're so happy that you have decided to join us. We are live every Tuesday night, as we are right now. But then afterwards, we are available as a downloaded podcast. And so you can always, at any time, join in our conversation, either during the show by calling in live or by leaving a comment on our website, which is www.allpromindset.com, or on our Facebook page or our Twitter page. So, listeners, tonight we are very excited to be continuing our discussion about influence and talking about being focused while working on mixed martial arts or working on our athletics or working on our academics, whatever it is that we're pursuing at the time. So, we hope you join in and can relate.
Yeah, welcome this evening's listeners. Yeah, we're continuing with the topic of influence. Last week we referenced how to win friends and influence people, and we're very, very fortunate to have Randy Brown, the mayor of Evesham Township and coach of the Baltimore Ravens, on discussing some of the ways that he approaches working with his professional athletes, and he also referenced his approach in working with the girls' youth team that went 13-0 and talked about that experience and how the pressure was, he said, surmountable to or considerable to the Super Bowl, which I thought was a pretty interesting perspective, and just talked about his approach and managing through that second half of the game. He said he had, at one point, 9 girls on the bench who were crying, losing, and then had to find a way to shift gears and really get them to kind of think outside of the box and shift emotionally, and then just keep them focused on the end in mind and having fun in the process and not thinking about the pressure. And sure enough, they come away and walk away with a championship, which was kind of neat. So one of the components that we focus a lot on, and this is just for both of us in the fields and the professions that we're in, is developing this feeling of trust with the people that we work with. And one thing that comes to mind is, getting people to kind of buy in. I had a conversation today with several students, and it was clear that without that piece, without that established relationship, there was absolutely no way this student was walking through my door today. It wasn't going to happen, and I knew there was something clearly on his mind because I hadn't seen him in probably a couple months. And, he walked in my office and he closed the door, and I knew, there was something more. But there were more than a few occasions in the past where, I sat down and I took the time to, just to kind of listen to him and listen to his story and listen to just find out more about who he was and his interests, and genuinely invested in that process. And I don't think that today's conversation would have happened if I didn't invest some time in working with him. And I'm guessing that those things, just even in my personal experience in working with you, Doc, I know the comfort level that I've had and have with you, and that established relationship to be able to kind of open up and walk through the door, and be able to express certain things is extremely important. And I know that you clearly have those types of relationships with the students that you work with.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to in order to build and progress. And I think that has also been a common theme with a lot of our guests. Even last week when we were talking to Randy Brown about all the things that he has going on, and he said he builds strong teams around him, whether it's the athletics or even his family life or even what he's done in the community. He builds the strong team around him and takes that team approach. We've had Dan Keeshan talked about that team approach, the community feeling in the city of Camden, and then how the city together was able to progress into a stronger community by building those relationships. And certainly when you're talking about a therapeutic relationship, the relationship between the therapist and the client is key. And a lot of studies have shown that regardless of what therapeutic modality you use, it's the relationship is the highest percentage of the cause for progress in the individual. So without a doubt, that relationship is key whenever you're trying to move forward and accomplish a goal.
Yeah, and this is not a short term. This is a process.
Right.
This is something that's built over time. And I know that Mayor Brown expressed that he had some relationships or has relationships that are 10 years. He said in one particular relationship, 20 years, 2 decades. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you're squeezing out the maximum unless you're putting in that investment. Mm-hmm. And he also talked a lot about surrounding himself with great people that not only builds them, but it's reciprocal, right? I give you my best, they give you their best, and together, we thrive. We cultivate and create this environment that everybody wins. And we talk about this concept of winning, and there's not a threat. I know that he also mentioned that. He said it was, I'm putting my best out there. I'm not worried about my job. I'm not worried about losing something. There's an investment here, and together collectively, we're going to get the best results if we can feel open and trustworthy and can share our biggest and best ideas with one another.
I mean, when we started the AllPro Mindset podcast, the first guest that we had was Louis Aloro, who is with the Flourishing Center and the Certificate in Applied Positive Psychology. And what he said to us on the first day was that positive psychology is about other people matter. And I think that that's at the base of all of this, is that other people matter. And in a world where we can become so self-focused, I think it's so important to really think about the fact that everybody around you and working together and building on each other's strengths and compensating for each other's weaknesses is how everyone is going to progress even further and in a stronger way.
Yeah, I agree. And, talking about relationships, this evening's guest is a very good friend of mine and someone I've gotten to know, over the years, had an opportunity to wrestle with in college, just built a relationship over time, and, got to watch him, kind of progress into this really just nationally renowned fighter. So, with that being said, he's currently working in the MMA boxing world, and he's called many things. So some of those references are Magic Man, Rain Man in fighting, Genius Loner, but his favorite thing to be called is Coach. He's built dominant fighters from the ground up, and really what he likes to do is identify the fighters' deficits and make decent and good fighters into great ones. And I think from any coaching perspective, I mean, what more could you ask, right? To elevate these levels and really identify these talents, and just to build off of that. And it's an obsession of his. I know it is. Breaking down the fight footage and kind of crafting this kind of winning game plan for a fight. Taking all variables into detail. And I know that it's not just an art of it, it's a science of his. So he's also a deep understanding in the strength and conditioning world, weight management, weight cutting. 33 years of wrestling experience, over 17 years of striking experience, and 7 years coaching as an MMA and boxing specialist. Current former clients include pro boxing world title holders and contenders, pro MMA champions, UFC fighters, and amateur MMA champions. They all know what they want, and Coach Sargus here is there to provide that for them. So welcome, Coach Sargus.
Mr. Frabel, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, man?
Doing very well. Good to talk to you again. It's been a little while.
Yes, it has. We're very fortunate to get you on this evening, pick your brain a little bit.
It's a pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for being on.
How are you, Doc?
I'm doing very well. So we're excited to have you here. So a question I had, so if you're looking back on your career, I'm wondering if there was a defining moment or moments that you would consider pivotal in your development as a competitor.
I have a tough time pointing to one particular. I mean, there's been quite a few that I think collectively helped mold and develop me as a competitor. You know, I wasn't born with that innate athleticism. I was a good athlete, but I was a funky athlete.
Athlete?
What's that? I'm sorry.
A funky athlete? What does that mean, a funky athlete?
I was a scrambler. I was long arms, real flexible, and I could just fall and end up in the right position. I was, like good kinesthetic awareness, proprioceptive awareness.
Okay.
But when I was younger, I wasn't exceptionally strong until probably after college. I started really understanding my physicality, how to get strong, and the science behind that, especially for my body type.
Mm-hmm.
But so having not had that naturally gifted innate ability, I adapted a style that I felt worked well for me. But unfortunately, that style beat up my shoulders and neck before I even got to college, really. I think I had 2 shoulder surgeries, and by the time I was 33, I had 5. So
wow.
I've had 6 total. So I've had to, I still try to wrestle with my guys. I still try to maintain a high level of activity, but I've had to modify. And, with that understanding, I think you guys touched on it before, that this thing, whether it's fighting or wrestling, a commitment to excellence is very process driven. And when you have to kind of modify or change course because of, whatever befalls you, whether it's an injury, whether it's life, whether it's, familial matters, whatever. Sometimes you got to change course. And, I think I said it before. I wrestled with Jason in college. He was an exceptional athlete. He was fast. He was strong. He was powerful.
Thank you.
With that, no, you're welcome. My shoulders and my neck do not thank you, though.
I planted him to say that, listeners.
But, and Jason, you remember guys who didn't necessarily have the same athleticism. Mm-hmm. Guys like Mike Mason was a good athlete, but I couldn't see him going over the middle and catching a pass or starting Division I baseball. Mm-hmm. But he was committed to a process, and he was disciplined, and he did exceptionally well. He was very, very good and became great. Sam Klein, I don't necessarily like the guy, but you talked about an individual who was not exceptionally talented his first year on that team, and 3 years later he was, a point or two away from the national finals. Mm-hmm.
Again, he was.
His commitment and dedication to the process is what got him there. And I was lucky enough to see that. Mm-hmm. And, I was humble enough to say, their commitment to it, and maybe my lack of commitment is, why I plateaued and only spent a couple years at WD Wrestling. And, Sammy had the ability to make it as far as just about anyone has ever gone for West Virginia. Mm-hmm.
So how much of this experience has affected you, in it sounds like a lot, in developing a personal approach to coaching these high-level fighters, right?
Oh, a ton, without a doubt. So I call it critical path methodology, right? And the difference between working cooperatively and working strictly competitively. You watch guys who had a core group of training partners and they pushed each other. but they didn't just hammer on each other. They developed each other. They worked on each other's deficits. They enhanced each other's strengths. That kind of cooperative group, that kind of cooperative mindset, when taken with, for me, professional fighters, would allow me to achieve much more than I could have on my own or working strictly in a competitive environment.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean is, if you have a fighter who's exceptional at wrestling, but his hands are a little iffy, he's not great at the boxing, not great at the striking, but he can wrestle, and he hasn't lost a round in practice because he's double-legging everybody. He's putting them on their ass, and they can't get up. Well, he's strong or he's already strong, but he's getting very limited exposure to the stand-up aspect. And when he fights someone that he can't take down very easily, that's going to get exposed and exploited. So rather than just winning in practice, it becomes more of a progression towards improving as a fighter. You know, if you become great at fighting, the wins will take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm. So when developing a team, you know, so you come in and you're working with certain fighters, you're in certain gyms. Are you crafting that to a degree to say, okay, well, we got this guy over here, and I hear about this guy, and he's a great boxer, right? And then there's the kicking piece, and then there's the jiu-jitsu piece. So the sport is evolving rapidly. It's not 10 years ago when you entered in and you get these guys, these ground and pound guys, right? It's expanding, and these guys are well rounded. So when you're looking to develop a team, I'm guessing you're identifying these strengths in these individuals and saying, okay, well, if I'm taking this approach, this cooperative approach, I'm going to try to identify these strengths and mold and build a team around that concept and that idea.
Yeah, well, it goes to my ability as a coach and my expertise, but I can't be limited by a bias of expertise, right? For me, if you watch my guys, and you've been to my school, you've seen my guys when I still have my school in Philadelphia. I wasn't given a group of wrestlers. I got a bunch of strikers, some break dancers, some guys who didn't have like a true athletic background whatsoever, and we built their skill set. We developed their skill set. So it wasn't like I just turned a bunch of guys that I had into these MMA wrestling phenoms. I did that with my wife, but that's it. I live with her and I see her every day. But I couldn't do that with all those other guys. They weren't necessarily built that way, and it wasn't highlighting where they were already good. So I had to take a look at, all right, how would I develop myself if I didn't have any wrestling? What am I vulnerable to? What are they vulnerable to? And it takes, and you said it earlier, it takes some time, and it takes a commitment. And if there isn't that buy-in from them, there isn't some sort of unspoken knowledge of reciprocity that you hope develops into trust that you're going to give 100% to them, and they're going to give 100% to you, and that they are going to do it the right way. That commitment to one another is the fuel that drives this thing. So, if you can get that, for me, identifying their weaknesses and their strengths is easy. I probably haven't watched less than 3 hours of fight footage or training footage, and unless my computer was on the fritz or I didn't have electricity. I mean, every day I've gotten at least 3 hours of exposure, watching some sort, or coaching or holding pads or training myself. So I see it every day. So that's the easy part. Building that kind of that buy-in, that kind of group philosophy, and still maintaining their individuality. That's the difficult part. But if you can do it, goddamn, it's lightning in a bottle. And I've been able to do it once, and I've been able to come pretty close with some individuals. But I'm hoping I can recreate what I was able to do early in my career.
Well, and we had a guest on several weeks back, a guy Darrell Weber, Iowa NCAA champ, and he has tactile wrestling, and he's heavily involved in the wrestling community. Has coached under Dan Gable, and they the interesting thing, and we had an opportunity to listen to one of his podcasts, and when he was on with Gable, and they talked about this independent versus dependent variables. How much are you guiding and directing, and how much space are you giving them to develop independently? This idea of freedom. That especially these high level achievers. I can only imagine the guys that you're working with have to feel some sense of like power and openness and directive, but at the same time an openness to kind of buy into the coaching philosophy. So on a day-to-day basis, it's how much guidance are you providing, and how much, I guess, free space or independence to kind of develop on their own are you providing?
Well, that's a great question, and there's a fine line between guidance and learned helplessness. If you give them, I said to myself, I'm going to give them every tool to succeed. But then you noticed a little bit of a dependence on me and my availability to them. And I'm addicted to this sport, to coaching. So if you need me, I'm there. And it isn't a cost per hour. $10 an hour is peanuts, and I don't charge that. But if I did, these guys, from Paul Felder that I used to coach, Anthony Terrell, to my current group of guys, they'd owe me thousands, because it isn't, hey, we're going to do this for an hour, and we're going to do it for as long as it takes to get it right. So long as you have the time and I have the time, and the facility maintains its hours of operation, we will be here till we need to leave. That kind of availability starts to become taken for granted a little bit, and the balance between what you just said, that kind of dependence versus independence. Because every athlete, once they start to develop and they start to get tough, if they recognize their dependence on the coach, they'll start to push back a little bit, even if they don't want to. And unfortunately, I think that happened with Paul Felder and me. I certainly made some mistakes in that relationship, but there was a time where I think my wife and a few of the other fighters in camp called me his Woody, because every time I walked out of the building, his question was, where'd he go? Where'd he go? Knowing that availability, there's some comfort there. But when you start to notice that, you start to feel that maybe I'm a little bit dependent on this individual, you start to withdraw a little bit, or you start to maybe turn things into conflict where you otherwise wouldn't really rebel. So eventually, I think that happened. And I think you're right, and Weber's right. There's a very fine line. And if you can manage that, to give them all the tools, but to not coddle or overindulge, or take away their sense of individuality, creativity, and their own sense of power, then you can do some really good things. For me, that's one thing I want to continue to improve upon is that balance. Right.
Yeah, I would think it would be pretty important for fighters and going in there to have a sense of power and control, right? You're stepping inside this octagon, and it's no holds barred, right? I mean, we're going at it, and there has to be something, right? I mean, this is primitive here, and you have to have some relinquishing. I mean, and feel like that freedom on some level in there to not be dependent. I mean, it is a balancing act. I mean, it has to be. It's like, how do I guide them through that process, enough, but where they're dictating what's going on, and they can be creative in the process, but you also have a plan. So there's a certain degree of adaptability in there. There's a number of variables, happening at once.
And that's the difficulty, and at the same time the beauty of that sport. The dynamic, chaotic, violent kind of conglomeration of all skill sets with a limited time duration, 3 5-minute rounds. So, and what did you say? They have to feel like they're powerful and control, but they're also with a game plan. They also have to feel like they have been prepared, that their eyes weren't the only eyes on this thing, that there was a coach's eye that helped guide them, that their coach saw the right thing, that they have been prepared the correct way, that they received the proper instruction, that this guy wants to try to wrestle or take down defenses there. If this guy wants to try and stand, how's our timing? How's our vision? How's our distance maintenance? And can we do what we want to do? So, I mean, it's almost a 50-50 split between what you're providing an athlete to help with their confidence. At the same time, when you unleash that guy in there, the man or woman, whoever you're fighting, whoever you're coaching, you want to make sure that, I guess the closest thing I can think of is you want kind of surgical aggression. You want the ability to do whatever you want whenever you need to on a moment's notice, but with surgical precision so as not to be wild or spastic or random. I think if you can get that, then that kind of precision, that's what separates, especially in mixed martial arts, the wild guys that are fun to watch and the guys that just seem to win no matter what. I think that's the difference, that kind of quiet calm during what is essentially the most chaotic and violent experience most people are going to endure in organized sports.
Yeah, I mean, from just listening to what you're describing, I mean, from both the individual competitor to also the coach, to anyone in almost any profession, it's almost like the individual has to feel their authentic self first. I think they really need to know who they are. They need to strip down to vulnerability at some point and rebuild up from there so that they know who they are. They have the confidence in their skill level, and then they're able to use what they need to use at any given point. They can't have that imposter system, like feeling that they're, so built up that they just unleash. They also can't feel so vulnerable that they're insecure from the vulnerability, but they just have to kind of know who they are, know their skill level, and be so in touch with what their skills are and so in touch and mindful with what is happening in the exact situation that they can draw on whatever it is they need to draw on to win that situation.
Well, I love that term, the authentic self, because I think if you would ask any fighter what that term means to them, you would get pretty much what we've all described, right? That tension of opposites, that balance and counterbalance between everything we've discussed, between needing that coach's eye and that guidance at the same time, just wanting to get in there and be you and push. And again, it's fighting, as controlled as we try to make it. And I use the word precision, but no, there's no fight without a degree of violence, and there is no violence without a degree of chaos. And trying to organize that the best you can, I think that puts the law of averages on your side. So. And again, it's something that I found incredibly difficult, at the same time incredibly rewarding when you are able to do that. And I feel like, in all honesty, in the fight game, I feel like I do that as well as anybody. I do.
Is there a certain approach that you would take to assist your fighters in managing the pressure of big fights, or the perceived pressure of big fights? Is there something that you do specifically?
Well, have you ever seen The Green Mile?
Yes.
So Michael Clark Duncan's character seems to swallow all the evil or all the negativity. When it comes fight time, when we're backstage and we're warming up, because the normal person, our fight or flight mechanism and response, and you guys are going to know these numbers better than I do, but no one's normally told 8 weeks prior, hey, you're going to have to fight this guy in shorts and no shirt in front of 1,000, 2,000, maybe 10,000 people. Like, that's a long time for that stress and for the inevitable parasympathetic response that's just going to hit you out of nowhere during that 6 to 8 week fight camp. So it's tough to control those nerves. It's tough to control that kind of, you can call it anxiety. It's maybe a mix between anxiety and sometimes fear or self-doubt, but the adrenal response that you get is a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine that come fight day, after you've already weighed in, you're getting ready to fight. They tell you you're the first bout of the night, right? And then, not the first bout. We're going to change you to the swing bout because we're televised. So what's that mean? You may be the 7th bout or you may be the 11th. So now you don't know exactly when to warm up. So in bout 6, you start warming up. You're about ready to go. Your adrenaline's starting to pick up, and they tell you, all right, that fight ended early, so we're moving you to the last bout of the night. So for me, I tell my guys, do not worry about that. Do not start warming up when they tell you to warm up when I tell you to warm up. If they tell you they don't like your hand wraps and they want you to cut them off and do them again, you come get me. Put that on me. Today is your day, and your day is about fighting. This is where I really come in, and it's, hey, if there's pressure and there's stress, it's my job to eat it.
Mm-hmm.
And there has to be trust that they can do that. If I shake it off and it comes back on them and they start to freak because, hey, man, you told me, and this is, it's hard to kind of have a guy dial it back and be brought back from that, I don't know what you would call it.
Adrenaline dump. I mean, something, the spot, that sympathetic response kicked in, right? How you draw them back. That's energy.
Yeah. So you have to tell them, hey, calm back down. So it's my job to manage that. I don't do well working with promoters. I don't do well working with, because I find them sleazy and very, very unappealing. The nicest, most honest promoter is probably one of the worst people you've ever spoken to. Let me put it that way. So I don't like them really even talking to the fighter. There's negative energy, whether or not you believe in that kind of law of attraction. And when that starts to become overwhelming, I don't know, maybe I'm an empath, but I feel it, and I try to at least isolate my fighters, or at least protect them from it, shield them from it, as well as I can, to maintain a level of calm and a heightened level of preparedness for what they are about to do. And that's, some of these guys look like they're fighting in their underwear. So they're walking out there with a pair of compression shorts and ready to, potentially get kicked or kneed in the head, dropping elbows, double legs. That's a difficult thing to do if you are stressed, frustrated, or distracted. So it's my job to help keep those things to a minimum. So I'll swallow it just like John Coffey in the Green Mile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting approach, and that doesn't happen if your fighters look at you and they see you stressed or mismanaging something or whatever it might be, that it only is enhancing their feeling of, being out of control or potential. So you, in kind of being that guiding light and there to kind of keep the balance and keep them focused on what they need to do, and when they step into the octagon, and helping them navigate through that. That does not happen without a high degree of trust and commitment. It just doesn't happen. So that's, when we refer to the magic man, that's part of the magic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to cultivate those relationships. And I'm not the kind of guy who would step in anymore and coach anyone if I don't have that relationship. I'm done. Those days are done. My interview process or my need to give you one on the arm just to show you I'm pretty good, those are done. If there's not a connection there, then, or mutual consideration, or that trust and that reciprocal arrangement, then I'm either all in or I'm not in at all.
And can you identify that? I mean, you have a ton of coaching experience at this point, right? You're considered a pro here. So when you meet a guy for the first time, a fighter for the first time, I mean, is this like something that you can identify quickly? You know, what's your process? What are you looking for when you're going to work with somebody?
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, it took me a while. It took me a while to start to identify and to tell myself, hey, listen, you don't have to take every fighter that comes your way. You know, one, he's a guy I like a lot. He's a friend of mine, Jeff Lenz.
Mm-hmm.
But Jeff likes me doing his weight cut, or he likes me as a friend. He doesn't listen to what I say as a coach. Never has. He's one of those guys that are so knowledgeable that he's actually a little bit difficult, and by a little I mean incredibly difficult to coach. He's got professional boxing experience. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He's got excellent judo. You know, his deficit is his wrestling. He's got professional Muay Thai experience as well. And you were at the fight. You actually helped him prepare wrestling-wise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember.
In Atlantic City.
Yep.
But, you know, Jeff thinks that no matter what, his jiu-jitsu is going to bail him out if he gets taken down. And he's lost, I think, 3 fights, all by split decision, against wrestlers. And his comment to me was, all these guys can do is wrestle. And my response was, hey, man, if that's the only thing they're better than you at, maybe it's a wise idea to get better at wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
If that skill set by itself is enough to beat your black belt in jiu-jitsu and beat your judo and beat your boxing, then maybe you'd be smart to pick up some. I try to give it to you, but you don't want it. You want just enough that you think will carry you through. But, and Jason, you know this, wrestling isn't, hey, show me a trick takedown defense right here. Show me this trick. It's fundamentals from day 1 to day 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
It's a commitment and adherence to the fundamentals. And it's not necessarily sexy. It's not necessarily entertaining. It's a grind. And some people just don't want it, or they don't see that they need it.
Right.
But if a guy can beat you with just wrestling, then maybe it's time to improve your wrestling.
Mm-hmm. How do you redirect some? You know, so I know we're speaking specifically about him, Jeff. You know, is there a way to redirect? Because I know for myself and coaching personally, the very first thing that I look for in any athlete that I work with is coachability. In fact, I'll assign something specifically and something very small just to see receptiveness. You know, do they follow through with the task? Did they do it? You know, and I'm like, if I can't get them to do that, then I don't know what I'm going to get them to, you know, be able to do, you know, and it's an investment. It's like you're saying, you know, you're going to invest an enormous amount of time into these guys or this particular fighter. And without that reciprocity, that unspoken, I think your words were unspoken reciprocity. You know, can I see that? Is there something that they do? Is there something that I don't want to say setup's not the right word, but is there a way to get to that more quickly? You know, to know what you got.
It's hard. You know, for me, I mean, I said earlier, I have to fight my impulse to take on anybody and everybody that wants help. And not everybody wants it the same way. And it's a thing, careful what you wish for, because, you know, if you want everlasting life, then you're stuck with me for life. You know, so be careful. You want me to coach you? I'm going to coach you. I'm not going to be your yes man. I got a kid, Sharif. I dropped him mid-camp, you know. I disliked his opponent so much that I would coach him for free, no doubt. But he wants to do what he wants to do. And he may beat this kid doing that. There's a good chance. Sharif Jones versus Will Martinez. And I do not like Will. But I have more respect for the process than I have dislike for Will Martinez. Right. So even if he does win, if he's not doing it the right way, and he's winning because of his athletic ability, or because maybe Will's a little bit older, or because something someone else has done, and I wouldn't take credit for the win any more than I would take responsibility for the loss. So, when you see it, when you don't see it, you got to move on. When you do see it, you got to try to figure out what it is you see.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's a feeling. Maybe it's something intangible.
Yeah.
You can.
I'm wondering if there's a way to streamline the process. Like it becomes different. At the level that you're at. I'm speaking from experience at the high school level, and where a guy out for the team. First year guy, and he doesn't even know why he's out. He just, I saw him in the hallway and I said, hey man, what are you doing in the winter? I think you should do something with your time. Right. Versus a fighter who's been invested and has put in, a ton of time and has a lot of experience. And now you cross paths with this particular individual and you're coming with a ton of experience and a ton of coaching experience. And it's like, how do we fit together? How is this puzzle going to be put together? And you're also not just working with them. I'm guessing that there are other coaches possibly involved in the process. So now it's them coming to me with their experience, and then other people who are involved, maybe they're carrying along with them, and how am I connecting with them and putting this all together? I can only imagine the complexity.
It's hard with the multiple skill sets, but that's another topic for another time.
Mm-hmm.
What you just said is the kid in the hallway that doesn't know why he's doing it. That's one of the questions I think if I want to streamline the process, I got to start to figure that out. And it's not just asking the fighter why he's doing it, because he's going to say because he likes to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily it. Some of these guys don't like to fight as much as they love to win.
Mm-hmm.
And winning, I'm stealing this from Kerry Colat. Winning is a byproduct of doing the right things and setting the right goals and doing the right things to achieve those goals.
Mm-hmm.
So you get great at fighting, and the wins tend to take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to win, beat up a bunch of junior high kids. You'll be 100-0. But it doesn't make you any tougher than you are right now. You haven't improved. You haven't progressed. It's like, what if you won? They don't have JV states, but if you were a JV state champion, does that really mean anything? To be undefeated 2 years in a row,
right?
But you're swimming with guppies, not eating sharks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it doesn't mean anything. You can be 20-0 against the 20 worst fighters in the world, and you could be the 21st worst fighter in the world. With a 20-0 record, that doesn't mean you're good. It means you're good at beating people up. You're not necessarily good at fighting. And if you're only fighting the guys you can beat, then you're pretty much a bully, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
What I want, what I look for, probably the most, failure recovery. You show me a kid who wrestles another kid for the first time and gets smoked, and then next time it's time to go live, finds that kid again and wants to go again. Or sparring, doesn't matter. Show me a guy that can't get past another guy's jab or low kick, and he just eating a ton, and he limps out of that first round, and they say round two, and he calls that same guy for round two instead of finding another partner, because he wants to figure him out. Because it's not about winning, it's about improving.
Right.
And we get better at fighting. How do we do that? How do we measure? Where's our rubric? Our rubric's right in front of us. That's our benchmark. Don't walk away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Walk towards it and figure out. What are you going to do if you're ranked third in the country? Are you always going to lose to number 2 or number 1? Or are you going to find a fucking way to beat them?
Right.
That's how you get great.
Yeah. And that's and there was what I think we referenced this at one point, and it sounds ridiculous, but the marshmallow test, right? They did it with these 5-year-old kids and said, hey, here's a marshmallow. They put it in front of them. I'll be back, and if you don't eat it in the time, then I'm gone. And to come back, I said, I'll give you 2. And they did this study back in the late 60s, early 70s, and found that those kids, the ones who resisted, they followed them through their life, this longitudinal study, and those individuals that resisted that marshmallow, as simple as an experiment as it was, they followed them, and those particular individuals that resisted were significantly more successful in their lives 20, 30, 40 years later. And there's gotta, there's this, the idea of resilience and that you can build this. And I do believe that you can, but at the same time, there's also this idea that, and Carol Dweck gets into this, the fixed versus a growth mindset. And she talks about individuals who are problem solvers. They get a difficult task. They don't get it. They work through it and they get it. And they say, you know what? I got another one. I got another task for you. I got another challenge for you. That's twice, 3 times as hard. And that individual's like, okay, let me do it. And then you'll get that individual who's like, oh man, that was tough, man. I need something. I need a break,
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's on that level, and that might be the craft, this problem solving mentality.
Mm-hmm.
I want the challenge. I didn't get it this time.
Are you willing to take your lumps while you're trying to figure it out? Are you okay
Mm-hmm.
with losing while attempting to win? Are you okay with that? Because that's what fighting is. You're not winning in wrestling. You're not winning every second of the match. But if you've lost because you're losing, then there will never be a comeback in your story. There will never be a comeback on your record.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to persevere. You have to push. You have to figure out that problem. If you're down 2 takedowns in the final minute, are you gonna try to take them down and cut them? We're going to try to get some backs. We're going to try to pick up some near falls. We're going to tilt. We're going to cradle. What are we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
You don't just check out and say, the hell with it, I'm done. You figure it out. And you do everything you can to see how close you can come. Everything you can to see truly where you fall. Even if you fail, even if you fall short. For so many of these guys, me included in some of my younger years, will walk away before you know the true story, because it's easy to say, I didn't even try towards the end. Well, whose fault is that?
Mm-hmm.
It's your own.
Right.
I mean, and it's the same story for anything that you attempt in life, and it's it kind of goes down to that personality. Are you defining yourself by what happens at the end, or are you defining yourself by how much you're trying along the way? And how much you're pushing yourself through, and how many times you can pick yourself up when you fail, and how you can just keep going and keep pushing and keeping that eye on your process the whole time. And I think you look at it and say, okay, it really takes a balanced person, I think, to be a good fighter, because you have to be able to balance all those things out. But on the other side, you kind of look at it and say, okay, well, if you can learn to be a good fighter, then you can also have a balanced life. It's kind of like interesting how it all parallels.
Without a doubt. You got to take the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, the good and the bad. It is a balance. And, that's something that I think, again, if I'm going to give myself credit, I think helping these guys find that balance. In a sport where intensity and more is always more, or they always think more is always better, and sometimes more is just more. So if you got a guy who loves working out and he wants to deadlift, my fighter, Paul, heard another kid was a 155er and he was deadlifting 600. So we had Paul just shy of 500, but it was stiffening him up, and he was getting stronger. I hate the fact that Sydney Outlaw's stronger than me. Well, the goal is fighting. You're a better fighter than Sydney is, and that's what we're focusing on. That's the important thing. Plus, Sydney's always coming in overweight, so maybe if I put under 6 pounds of muscle on you, we get closer to 600, but then you don't make 155 anymore. Let the goal be the goal. And understanding that. And only if you recognize the goal can you truly recognize the process.
Mm-hmm.
One is not necessarily derivative of the other, but I think usually they are. So, goal identification and kind of understanding of the process, recognition of the process, and how you get there. And I think that's part of the buy-in too. If they see that they had success, and developed a certain way, they are more inclined to try to repeat the process.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of what they do.
And that's the power of coaching and the power of persuasion and getting them to see things that maybe they're not seeing, and collectively working together and saying, you know what, I didn't look at it that way. And you're just, you've find a way to kind of merge that art and that science and say, you know what, I'm coming in with a great knowledge base, but I'm also coming in with a ton of experience, and I am here to guide you through this process. And you're doing that, you know, day in and day out, and having an opportunity to work with some phenomenal fighters. Also an opportunity to work with your wife is pretty unique, right? It's been great. I'd like to see some of them argument. No.
Anthony's a lawyer. She's smarter than me too.
But Coach Sargus, man, we are truly grateful to have you on, man. I know we need to stay in touch a little bit more, right? And catch up.
Please do. Please do. I'm up in Long Island now. So
Long Island, not too far. So you've had some great insights, and I know some phenomenal takeaways for our listeners this evening. So thanks again, man. And maybe we get you back on again.
I'd love to. And thank you both very much, because I've got some takeaways myself. Again, even though I've only been doing this since 2010, 2011, I'm still pretty new to it. And I'm looking to absorb as much information as possible. So, that's the understanding of the marshmallow test. I'm going to buy a bag. figure out
the unspoken reciprocity.
Should not commit to, and then I'm going to shame them all on their authentic self.
That's right.
That's the test, man. Give them the marshmallow and walk away. But watch them on camera.
You could be able to take the bag of marshmallows.
All right, man. Well, have a great evening, and thanks again, man, for coming on.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you both. You guys were great.
All right, Coach. Yep.
So, I mean, that was really interesting. So much to talk about with him. One of the things that, I teach a course for Stockton University, and one of the discussions that I talk about with my students is about whether we're in a collectivist or an individualistic society, and where do you fall within your own personal views on that. And overwhelmingly, people will respond that they're individualistic and that they will raise their kids to be individualistic. But when you think about it, I think that really a collective approach in so many ways is really the key. And I think when you can still be an individual within a collective. I think about a baseball team. I'm not an athlete, but, I think of a baseball team. Each player on the team has their role, and they have what they need to focus on, what they need to do. But their common goal is to work together to win the overall game. So if any of them don't follow through with their role, they're all at a loss. But when all of them work together and work at that strength in their position, then they all can progress forward. And I think that is reflective of everything that, Coach Sargus was saying about building up the team and kind of recognizing strengths and weaknesses to kind of move forward. And I think overall, really, we're much better suited for growth when we work collectively.
Yeah, and he talked about the cooperative, kind of training approach or training theory, and that, there are multiple people involved in this process. And, it's not just the fighter who's evolving, right? The coach is evolving as well.
Sure.
These new relationships, these new fighters, we're coming in and we're saying, okay, while I have this knowledge and experience and this understanding, I am dealing with another individual, right? And to kind of assess, where they're at and how I can best approach working with them and melding that those two pieces, that level of independence and as well as dependence, and that's where that persuasion and that trust and that coaching piece come in to kind of manage and navigate through that. But and the goal is to get better, right? It's a process for each of us, as we're navigating through. No matter who we're working with, no matter who's in front of us at any particular time. And I think sometimes that lens is, jaded's not the right word, but it's not as clear as it could be, because we're bringing in this past experience and thinking like, hey, well, this worked before, right? And in this situation, but I have someone different in front of me. And that's where the listening and the sincerity and that relationship comes in, and really finding out what makes that person tick, their interest, what they do, not only just in the gym, but outside of the gym as well.
Yeah.
What type of life are they living, right? And are they committed to this process? So, there's a number of different challenges that it takes to be a phenomenal coach, and excel at what we do, or just to be excellent. We talked about just excellence, and that comes from being a good role model, as well as really being in tune to whoever it is that's in front of us.
And being coachable. I think being vulnerable enough to allow someone else to coach you, and to recognize that you don't have all of the answers right up front, and that it's okay to look to a mentor, look to a coach, look to a teacher to kind of help you get to the goal and to progress and to move forward. It takes an understanding of who you are as a person, who you are as a competitor, if that is, or a businessman or woman, and really, like, whatever fields you're in, is to really just say, okay, this is who I am, and these are my strengths, and I'm going to allow somebody else to help build on those and to help bring up my weaknesses.
Yeah, and I know that you referenced that authentic self, right? In letting somebody be who they are and kind of direct themselves through this process, but not to the degree what we refer to as learned helplessness, right? Where I'm so dependent on you that I cannot make a decision for myself, or if I'm a fighter and I'm in the octagon, in a moment of battle and a moment of heat, that somehow I'm in that moment, and there is no moment. I can't look to the corner and say, hey, coach, can you keep me from getting punched in my face, repeatedly? Like, you got to figure it out, so that adaptability, that stuff, that coachability and that trust and that commitment, that stuff happens far before they step inside that octagon. And I think when you have that established relationship, when they get in there, it's what was the term, like surgical precision, surgical, there's this plan and it's tactical, but I got to be present. I got to be in the moment. I got to be adaptable. And it's just so many components, so many moving parts to kind of get it right, but I think whether it's as a coach or as an athlete, we're committed to the process. I think eventually with time that match, that pair, that thing happens, and sky's the limit.
Absolutely. So listeners, thank you so much for tuning into our show tonight. We hope that you found a takeaway from this episode and can incorporate the mindset of Coach Sargus into your own life. Next week, we will be speaking with Dr. Charles Carabassi. He's a chiropractor from Marlton and a former professional bodybuilder. And we will be discussing vitality. So until next time, get out there and start living your life all in.